What's up, everybody? Welcome to a fantastic Friday with me, your host, Francesca Fiorentini of the Bitchuation Room. Again, an extra special little thank you to everyone who listens to this show, who is part of the Frantifa, who watches live. What is up? Usually Fridays. Well, no, okay. I'm hedging. Fridays can sometimes be solo streams, but often they are deep dives, like looking into how crypto tourists and billionaires are destroying Puerto Rico, as we did a week ago. Or today, looking into how crypto tourists and billionaires are destroying comedy. No, wait, no, we're looking at comedy. We're going to talk all things stand-up comedy specifically. And to do that, I'm going to bring in my friend Amy Miller, and I'm really excited to have this conversation. I've been wanting to talk about stand-up for a very long time, and I'm sure a lot of people listening are like, yeah, why don't you talk more about stand-up, Francesca? Well, number one, I don't have as many shows as I'd like. You got to come see me. So there's one of like, there never seems to be a good moment to talk about stand-up. I'm not a working comic that's traveling all over the world. I'd like to be that and plan that. Don't have a baby if you're trying to do that, like I did. But, there's places to catch me. Obviously, Chicago, August 19th and 20th for the DNC with Matt Lieb. But I wanted to talk about the inner workings, the sausage, how it's made. And for that, I want to bring in Amy Miller. But first, just so you get a taste of who we're talking about, who she is and how wonderful she is, let's sample some of my favorite bits that are out there to enjoy. Here she is.
I've had a hard adjustment getting back into regular life after being trapped inside for so many months because fuck bras, okay? And you've been saying no your whole life. And I really appreciate that. Because fuck bras. Remember when we were just like at home swinging? Just flapping around all day. Sir, you looked so wistful when I said that. Do you live with someone with titties? Did you visit some people with titties? Weren't those pandemic fucks fun? When you're like, I'm not supposed to be here. And we were like, I'm not putting on real clothes or makeup. By the way, that is how you would know my true age, is if I took this bra off. You'd be like, oh, 1980. Yeah. Those are Reagan titties for sure. Couple of trickle-down tits,
I gotta stop it there, but there's so much more. She is a nationally touring festival and comedy club headliner. She's performed in so many festivals: Moon Tower Comedy Festival, Bridgetown Comedy Fest, South by Southwest. She's got a half-hour special on Comedy Central called Ham Mouth. Please welcome Amy Miller.
Hi. Hey, what's up? How's it going?
What's up?
I'm so happy to see you.
I'm happy to see you too.
I'm honored to be your mouthpiece for stand-up comedy. Should I be insulted? I don't know.
No, you should feel really good about it, because I'm basically saying, like, I need someone who I want to talk about the industry, and I want to whatever it is. But I also think it's really easy to be outside of it. Just like, I'm a big leftist. It's easy to be outside of, like, a campaign or an organizing like a movement and be like, you know what they should do this and da-da-da-da. And there's so many people who are outside of stand-up who critique stand-up, and oftentimes people even make like livings or specials, or like they love to just shit on stand-up as if they were sort of part of it, but they're not, right? They're not actually working, they're not touring, and so do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's really important.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I'm always torn on it, because on the one hand, whenever anyone's like, well, you're a real comic, I'm like, oh, I'm a loser. Because it is such like an embarrassing like thing to be a part of in many ways, even though I love it so much.
Well, what? Tell me more.
I'm like, oh, wait, say that again.
Tell me
Which
more.
parts are
Why?
embarrassing?
Yeah, why is it an embarrassing thing to be a part of, even though you get to make people laugh many nights of your week?
I do. Well, it's such a mix of things. I mean, in some ways, it's just like so non-traditional that even though I also am very non-traditional and, you know, a feminist, can we
You could
say that
say
on this
you
show?
can definitely say it on this show.
Like we all still have that kind of like old school part of us that's just like, what am I doing? Like I'm in my 40s and I just like fly town to town and tell jokes. Like it is a male thing because they made it that way, but it also has become a male thing in the gross way where you're just like, ew, what am I doing? Like my friends have like 401ks and children and shit,
Yeah.
which I mean, we're gonna get into this, I know, but like I should all, I'm not gonna have kids, but I should also have some job security and
You should
like
have job security.
financial security for the future based on how much I work at this thing. But it's just like, I don't know, it's just like a gross profession kind of. And
Yeah,
I
I
love
mean,
it. I love it to death.
yeah, and I think a lot of the people who make it gross we'll talk about a little bit later. But I did want to talk about that piece of like the job security, yeah, and like not having retirement. I mean, this is something you have to work so hard for stand up to like love you back in any kind of monetary way. But what is it? So what is it like being a working stand up comic? And how precarious is it? And also, like, how did the pandemic change it, if at all?
So I don't know how much the pandemic changed it for me specifically, but that's also because I don't um I don't do like TikTok or whatever. um you know what I mean?
And that's major, right? It's like the fact that you didn't necessarily have to do TikTok. You were like, is, I think a
mean,
lot of us are like kicking ourselves. We're like, why didn't we do more TikTok?
sure watched thousands of hours of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, if anything, it made me much more grateful because when the pandemic started, of course, a lot of us were like, "Oh, this thing might just go away. Like maybe we're never going to gather again." Probably we still shouldn't be, but here we are.
Yeah. With the
Like
flirt
we
variant.
really thought, oh, like we were comforting ourselves with like ancient times, like examples,
Yeah.
like, oh, whatever happens, there's always a jester, there's always some live performance, like throughout history, like really like taking comfort from that like idea that maybe live
Will
performance, live
survive.
comedy, yeah, can never go away, which I don't know if it's true, but for whatever reason, at least COVID didn't end it. But so it made me much more grateful for it, for sure. And just to be
Were you
able
able
to
to go on
travel.
were you able to get on unemployment or anything because of like shows missed? Like,
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it was my first time ever collecting unemployment in my life, and I've had many like straight jobs, corporate jobs, and I've lived and worked in California most of my life, some of it in Oregon. But it was so hard to get at first, and I was just like, "Wait, like no, I've paid into this. Like
yeah.
I've never asked for it before. I really need it." And it came through, but it took like months, and I was just like, I literally can't do my job or any job. So like, it's crazy that I mean, you should just give it to me. Just give me the unemployment.
Seriously.
It's like I've had so many jobs in California, but anyway, that worked out fine. Um, and currently, like as far as the future goes, I don't know. I have to not think about it too much because I have a lot of sleepless nights.
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s. I'm very lucky that I don't have children. No offense to your beautiful, gorgeous
okay.
baby you have with my friend. But it makes it a little bit less scary for sure because it's just like, well, I can, as long as I'm able-bodied, like I can work,
Right.
and
But the
even if I'm
work
not.
is and I wanted so the reason okay, so backing up, the reason I wanted to talk to you is because I feel like you are a comic who's not afraid to talk about some of the sausage, the bullshit that comics have to put up with, the gatekeeping, the shittiness, the predators, the sexism. And I want to get to all that, but I just wanted that sense of like, yeah, like what is it like? How long have you been doing stand up? And then without like telling me like how much you earn, but like what's the kind of grind like? What do you have to do in order to make your ends meet and live this life?
Yeah, I think the most anxious piece of it is that it is very inconsistent. So when times are good, there's nothing better because you do feel like you almost got it over on the system because you're like, oh, I just got this check for telling jokes. Like that's insane. Like
Yeah.
I can't complain about shit because people work shitty fucking jobs all day
Yeah.
long. And I've done it. I've
Yeah.
had so many jobs. I still will say jokingly right now, like I'm on vacation because I haven't had a full-time, sort of like 9 to 5-ish job since I guess like 8 years. So it's very scary, but when it's good, it's good. When it's bad, it's terrifying, but you pick up other work. I have no pride about working. I think a lot of comics get to this point where I've been doing comedy 14 years this September. So
Nice.
almost 14. And I'm in a specific situation where I started late too. Like I started when I was already 30, which is rare-ish. It's less rare now. And so I had already like lived all these other lives, and worked in tech and worked in music.
Yeah.
I think it set me up to have better material at the start, but now it's like, well, I'm in my 40s, which not supposed to say out loud as a woman, but I say it loudly on purpose. It definitely adds to that, like sort of midlife anxiety though, where you're just like, what is the plan? Like,
yeah,
I will have thankfully some, I mean, if we have Social Security, what a nightmare. I will have some things that I earned from straight work, as an older person, but it is scary. I don't know. I mean, it's month to month. Without saying what I make, sometimes I open for other people that are rich and much more famous, and that'll be like one big check for, doing 15 minutes in an arena, and then the rest of the time is scraping to be paid what I was promised at comedy clubs around the country, but not being a diva about it, but just like asking if I could be paid what was in my contract. Just like basic shit.
Could you just honor what was my fucking contract?
Yeah.
I mean, and to be real, like we know that corporate gigs pay well, nonprofit gigs pay well, but you do like clubs, like you're doing a lot of not smaller, but venues, and they don't pay as well as those other
right.
Those gigs do. And do you like have someone booking these for you, or do you have a booking agent, or do you yourself have to go and be like, hey,
a little bit of both. I mean, our agents, our booking agents, like, they're not obviously too concerned with a $2,000 club weekend. They will deal with it sometimes, but it's like, I mean, it's literally $200 for them.
It's not enough money for them.
Yeah, which I would love to have that $200, so I would rather book myself. But I've also just always been like kind of good at that stuff. I think it's more difficult for other comics a lot of the time just to ask, to reach out, to be organized about it, like plan all your own stuff, Like I have friends who can't get on a flight without calling their manager for the information, and that's just very much not me. Like I'm very self-sufficient. So it's easier and also harder, of course. Like it's harder to do it all yourself. But when I say that piece about the day job, that is my reminder at like whatever the economy of it is, I've been able to, have a 1-bedroom apartment in LA and not have a boss and not have a day job for the most part.
Yeah.
For
that's what
I mean. So that's like success to me, I think.
I think that is living. That is definitely living the dream. I mean,
no savings.
I started comedy in 2009 abroad in Buenos Aires randomly, and it was always fits and starts, and I think that's hard when it's fits and starts. At AJ Plus, I had a lot of my comedic itch, scratched. And then I had my best years in San Francisco when I wasn't actually working, when I like left AJ Plus and I was like, oh, this is great, and moved down to LA and I was like, this is great. And then the fucking pandemic happens. But I just wanted to give my little, like, this is where I'm coming at it. But I want to go into like the inside, behind the scenes of comedy, and then also kind of like culturally where comedy's moving now and this whole cancel culture discussion. But First of all, I want to talk about this like thin blue line of comedy because there is no job security. There's no HR. There's no union for comedians. If you're in SAG, cool. If you're in WGA, cool. But there's no like union for stand-ups where we all know what everyone's getting paid for opening or for headlining or whatnot. There's a lot of it's really difficult. And especially when like some shit goes down, like someone whips their dick out and masturbates in front of you. But there's also the thin blue line is you don't talk about the kind of shit that goes down in the green room.
Yeah.
You don't talk shit about other comedians because you might need that other comedian for a job. You want to be cool with them so you can get booked, to open for them or whatnot, especially if you're not top dog, which art in this country is so much about either you're a millionaire or you're just barely scraping by kind of thing. But so am I overstating the case of like how comics don't talk shit on one another, or what do you think about that?
No, I think you're right. I don't think I'm one of those comics, for better or for worse. There's always some lines that I will hold if it's like, and a lot of it is financial, right? Where it's like, well, if this thing happened in this particular club this many years ago, but that person doesn't work there anymore, like why is it also the woman headliner that has to take the stand and be like, I'm not going to take that money? Like, so many of these decisions have to be financial.
Right.
Having said that, I've burned many a bridge and given up many opportunities and a lot of money for, talking about shit that I think is literally just the difference between right and wrong, like, and fairness. And it's of course been called a social justice warrior many times, but I'm just also a regular justice warrior. Like this shit isn't fair. Like, it's not fair that you can be unfunny and an asshole and a predator and still get paid to do the job. Like, I wish more people would see it as a job. I think that would alleviate a lot of this, because we were, as women, as comedians in general, we were always sold this lie that like, you just be funny and work hard and be nice, something will work out for you, whatever that path is, if you stick around. And like, yeah, I'm doing fine, but there's many opportunities I just don't have access to because I said something about a rapist, I said something about a creep, and a lot of those situations work themselves out.
What do you mean by that?
There have been many, but it took time. Like, now that
Right.
I'm almost 14 years in, I'm at the point in time where people come around and go, oh, you were right the whole time, which, I love to hear. Don't we all?
Give it to me.
Still sucks you didn't support me then. It's like you would rather like save face with your boys or whatever than just really look at this obvious problem. But that's another topic we can get into, which is like the nice guys of comedy who don't have to do shit or care about anything.
We'll talk about it. I mean, I think
me
people
more
want
than the actual predators, because it's a gray area.
Well, we'll talk about that because I think we should be specific. You know what I mean? Like, what are like the things that the things that would bother you? I mean, we talked a little bit about the pay equity, but we could go into that more. But specifically with like, let's talk about like creeps, like predators, right? About a couple years ago, you couldn't wake up. I'd like wake up every morning. There'd be some new article, some long read about like some comedian I used to admire. No, I don't think I ever admired Chris D'Elia, but Chris D'Elia, Jeff Ross, TJ Miller, Brian Callen, I used to like. And we're talking, I don't mean like this is worse than Louis stuff. Like whipping it out, like masturbating in front of someone seems almost like ridiculous next to like the grooming, the assault, all that kind of shit. And yet these guys are all still working. And every single time you're like, oh man, this industry fucking sucks. But so how does that make you feel as a comic who might have to work alongside them? And then what are we're in a moment of seeing a lot of the ways that industry, I mean, look at fucking P. Diddy, and I don't want to equate any of that, but like the industry protects people so long as they're making them money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. again, like there's a few different things that go into these decisions, but for the most part, I'm happy to talk out loud online and face to face about any predator, and fuck them all. And it's like Brian Callen's doing fine. You know why? Because there were chains of comedy clubs that immediately were like, we stand by you. You'll always work here. And so it's like, you have that. Whereas I can lose work and burn a bridge by just saying like, hey, maybe like not cool to rape. And then everyone wants to
Right.
talk about how it's all about being nice and working hard and being funny. It's truly not. It's a fucking boys club. And like the cancel culture people are very upset, if a predator loses work, but they don't give a shit when me, a fellow working comic, because I'm in the rooms with all these people, you know what I mean? Like, might lose work because I said this guy's a piece of shit, whether you guys thought I was right at the time or not, because it doesn't come around again later. I mean, there are a couple professional opportunities that have come up where people are like, oh, I know you were never able to do this because of this whole thing that you like spoke out about, but here it is now because this person's been fired, years later. It's always too late. But there's certain, there are people that are tied to a lot of my financial and comedy success that I can't be like, this person's a huge piece of shit online, but I'll tell you in private.
We're very good at talking shit in private.
I mean, Jeff Ross, I've talked about online. I always worry about being in trouble for it because I work at the Comedy Store. He's always there. He's a fixture. We have to work together. I've brought him on stage there. I think people don't really also read that article about him or watch the woman's credible and extensive video evidence of pictures of them together and all this stuff. Like, if you were in a courtroom and you watched this, you would be like, oh yeah, like he for sure did that shit. And nobody cares. Nobody cares that Jeff dated a 15-year-old when he was in his 40s. And I can say that now, but he's not going away. Right. A lot of these dudes
to the point where like, you can roast him for it, right? Like he's the roast king and then the joke is made about it.
Because that's the thing. It's like we can't even make jokes about. I couldn't make jokes about it. I guess
you could not. Friends, that's right.
Yeah. But as far as I know, it's been kind of off limits even on the roasts. And there's so many cases where that happened where people would joke about this for years. And then it comes out and it's like, oh, you all knew. Like, I'll never forget when the Cosby thing like came out in the big way, and this went on for decades. That Patton Oswalt, a comedian we love and respect, who is usually on the right side of history, was like, we've all known about this for years. And I'm like, cool, okay. So you just like didn't do anything about it? Like, that's not a good response, Yeah. And I remember Sinbad being like, if they all knew and cared, like, why didn't they say anything,
Yeah.
Because Sinbad's like, now I'm in this spot where he's like my friend and Cosby's giving me work. He gave me so much in my career.
Right.
And you want me to come out and say this is a monster, but you all knew?
Yeah.
The whole same thing with Louis. Like, people, oh yeah, he's been doing that for years. And it's like, okay, well, again, it's the quiet good men that are more sinister to me in comedy in many ways than the actual predators. And it's really frustrating because many of them are my friends. And I'm like, you just get to have this fun time where you're on the road and you tell jokes and kick it with your friends. And it's like, I have to have this whole other piece where I'm supposed to be like a great fucking person. And I don't want to be, I'm tired.
I think that is just so apt and so well put. But if to underscore it, the idea that that the nice guys pad out some of the predators and the creeps, and they don't have to face down necessarily. They're not on the receiving end of some of the sexist behavior, or they don't have to like knowingly go into a lion's den and a horrible work environment for them to do their jobs. And
yeah, I mean, I have close friends that would shake the hand of Harvey Weinstein right now just to not cause any weird moments, And it's just like,
for sure,
cowards. Yeah.
For sure. But you have to be someone who has integrity like yourself and believe in yourself. And I think there's a certain that goes along with it, because I think when you're coming up in stand up, it's a lot of like, oh, just be cool, just be fun, don't be weird, don't, and also be funny, but not even be funny. You don't really have to be all that talented.
Doesn't seem like it's required at all.
Yeah, right. Just be around and sort of do the fluffing of the famous people. But yeah, that's really funny. And of course, let's not forget that Hannibal Buress's entire like bit about Cosby as an open secret was kind of the reason that it got reopened. That it was like,
and he blew up in that moment. But even Hannibal has said out loud, like, I don't want this to be the reason I took off and started selling out theaters. But also like, yeah, we've all known this shit.
Right.
And it's not, I didn't blow the whistle on it. You just didn't listen to women. Like, I'm not saying Hannibal's like a fucking saint, but you know what I mean? Like, he's not a rapist.
Right. Well, and that's
like,
the bar.
I don't want to be affiliated with this. Yeah. Oh, it's such a low bar. Yeah. The bar is absolutely in hell. Like, and that's the thing. If you're just like a nice guy and you just don't say anything, like you can get so far with a couple of little jokes and have a really nice, fun career where you don't have nightmares about comedy all the time and feel afraid on the road. And again, you have to fight to be paid what you were promised. And like,
well, tell me about that. Like, you I think you've recently posted about like pay inequity in a major like club franchise, and that, yeah, there's a lot of it is like, we just don't talk about it. Don't ask what you're being paid.
Yeah.
But that, that women have been like sort of serially underpaid.
Yeah. And I think what people don't talk about also enough is that it's in so many different economies too, that we like, just on the financial thing really quickly again, my sort of monthly income, it's from a number of things. It's not just getting a check from the club. It's royalties, it's from, Sirius XM, Pandora streams. Like, it's not a ton, it's not a lot, but it's something.
Yeah.
And it's this kind of like now passive income. And even that, I've had fights with Pandora because their algorithm is extremely sexist, very racist in a hilarious way. Like, I challenge you to make a station for an Asian comedian right now. Guess who you're gonna hear? And do you think that like Joel Kim Booster and Dat Fan have anything in common comedically?
Oh
No.
my God.
They're just Asian American. Like,
right.
And so this passive income, like the top, sort of 100 straight white men in comedy are getting tens of thousands of dollars a month passively from Pandora streams that women don't have access to in the same way. Because if you make a Tom Segura station, even though I tour with him and maybe we have similar comedic sensibilities sometimes,
yeah,
I'm never coming up on that station because all you're getting is men, and every single one of those men gets money from that. I might come up if you make, an Amy Schumer station, or what's crazy is I'll come up if you make a Maria Bamford station. And yeah, R.I.P. And Maria is a comedic genius, but she's so different from me.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any, you should have Emo Phillips come up on her station, not me. So it's the pay inequity is at every fucking level. And the club chain I was talking about also includes a local LA club. So they're doing that in our faces, like that night. You know what I mean? Like paying in cash the men 5 times more than the women, which again, I only know because someone working there told me. And so it's like, I can't say where it is. You know what I mean? Like,
and what do you do in the face of that, Amy? Like, what do you want to do? Are you like, to the barricades, let's organize? Or are you like, fuck this industry? Or you like, fuck this club? Or it is really difficult. And we won't necessarily talk about it, but venues are fucked in their own ways. And yet we need them. We rely on them.
Yeah. So it's 2 things. And I'm always writing that line of, again, keeping my job and fighting that idea that I have to be the one. And you know, and not just me, obviously it's like I tour with Nicole Byer and Wanda Sykes, like they have to deal with shit so far beyond what I have to deal with in comedy because I'm white, and they always have to be this like beacon of like perfect behavior, you know what I mean, while fighting for everybody else. So I'm always trying to balance like how do I keep my job and also speak up. But
not recently, but remember the Monique Netflix kerfuffle years ago?
Oh yeah.
I mean, where she was like, "Nah, you were offering me something like trash money," and then it was sort of billed as like she was being a whiner,
crazy,
you know,
yeah.
that she was
Wanda
being crazy.
Responded and said that's like, I don't remember the number, so don't quote me on this, but like, you know, 10 times more than what they even offered me. And like, and we're talking again, we're talking about very funny, very accomplished. Like Wanda Sykes, I think, is one of the greatest comedians of all time. One of the best people I've ever worked with. So let's not, you know, continue this lie of, oh, just be funnier or work harder. Like, no, it's Wanda fucking Sykes. Like, pay her, you know?
Yeah.
Or just say that it's not about that. Like, just tell the truth. It's just that I feel like these guys never want to tell the truth. But I'm trying to keep my job while also fighting this shit. But I try to keep sort of specific requests, I guess, or like specific tips. I mean, one is just if you are one of these so-called like good men in comedy, good straight men, be transparent about what you're making. You don't have to fight the club, but you can let your women friends know that we're also on the lineup what you got paid that night. Then maybe if all of us know, oh shit, like you're making 5 times what I'm making when, and just in case anyone is like getting up in arms, I'm talking about like people on my same level. You know, I'm very realistic about like, is this a gender thing or are you just much more famous than me and you filled the room? Of course I know the difference. I'm talking about people on the same level getting paid differently for one reason only, like in such a glaring way. So I'll always ask for men to be transparent. And if I book a club, I'll often ask other dudes on the calendar that I know, what are they paying you? If you're uncomfortable saying or you won't tell me, I'm like, fuck off. You know, I'm not going to post it. It's like, I need to know for my own reference. So I know what to ask for. And that's the easiest, most passive thing you can do to help if you care. But again, like a lot of these like nice guys don't give a shit either. They're just trying to get by, keep their job. And yeah, so transparency.
And it's wild that it has to be up to you. I mean, just in the same way that like, you know, calling someone out for their like predatory behavior or alerting the workforce to an unsafe character, to put it that way. It's like it shouldn't be on you to individually be like asking other comics, what are you making? Because if there was any kind of guaranteed paid equity or any, you know, kind of standard, then everyone would know. Or if they were just transparent with it, right? Hey, this is what you would make if you're X money years working at the club versus, you know. So
and now that I'm also like this many years in and I have whatever reputation I have, which is like, I don't know, bad with the industry and good with good people. No, it depends. The industry is changing a lot all the time too, which is nice. So there's like, you know, gatekeepers now that were servers or assistants when I started that are like, I love you, I'm watching you, and I'm on your side, and like I'm gonna get these jobs where I make decisions, and we're gonna fucking mob up and like not hire these dudes.
Yeah. I fucking love that. I mean, well, I did want to talk about, you said the word gatekeeper, and I think for like audience members, they might not know what that means, but in comedy, it's largely bookers, agents, managers, but bookers really, club owners. And, you know, also in festivals, I mean, Just for Laughs, this was a couple years ago, right? But Jeff Singer was his name. He was the talent booker for Just for Laughs and was sort of outed as being a raging sexist, only booking or passing women who like were like hot, he thought was hot, or like wearing short skirts or something like this.
But his idea of hot, yeah, because also he would eliminate women immediately if they wore a skirt and boots together.
Oh,
this
yes,
is
yes,
real.
yes, sure.
And this had been a rumor for years, and I watched it with my own eyes because as a crazy person, I sat behind him at a round of Just for Laughs auditions to watch him take notes.
And he like
I'm insane.
drew the woman but only with like short heels with like.
Oh no, this woman just came out with high boots and a skirt. He said he wrote no immediately before she spoke. Like, this is not a joke. And I took a picture of it because that you get gaslit so much too, where you're like, oh, no, this is real. Like, oh shit.
It's happening before my eyes. And JFL, by the way, it was, a really important festival and a marker for many comics to have been passed and be at the JFL showcase. And it is no longer, did it go under?
It might be back. It might not be back. I don't know. I mean, that's one of the biggest things, sort of industry milestones that I don't have access to because of my interactions with Jeff Singer, which again, this goes back to like just this fucking sensitivity and double standard of men in this industry. When I told this man to his face, like, oh, I know you think I'm funny, but you probably won't like make me a new face because you don't want to fuck me. He laughed. We were laughing. We were having drinks. We were like, haha. He was like, you got a lot of moxie. You know what I mean? Like, it was not a serious situation until the next day where he decided to like reap some sort of revenge and tell, the other people at JFL and like essentially ban me and become like obsessed with me in this insane way. Not
because
in my head. People would tell me.
Because you said
and it was real.
And that's what makes you funny, though. That's what makes you a good comic, Amy, is like the fearlessness and the funny, and also just being able to like say that shit is like so.
But if dude said that to him, that's a totally, like, oh, I see who you're booking, whatever. We know what you're up to, old fella. Like he wouldn't have gone anywhere. But I've literally been banned from JFL, like no exaggeration, over this one interaction like 10 years ago. He's since been fired for saying the N-word a bunch. And then again, that's one of those situations where people come around and go like, oh yeah, you were right. Like all these comics wanted to post like, Amy called this guy on his shit years ago. And I'm like, but what? You weren't fucking standing with me then. You didn't say anything because you were afraid of repercussions, which is a big part of it. And this is maybe like, I was kind of raised by a punk partially. Like,
hell yeah.
And my family's very like white trash punk where we just don't want to work for people that are shitty to us and would rather just like struggle than like compromise. You have to be willing to lose some of these things. And it sucks. Like it sucks I can't do JFL. Some of the people that worked there, but this is also an organization that for years employed a man who was a convicted rapist. And I just need to say that again. Convicted, admitted, convicted, served time, and then was like, don't quote me on his position, but like president or something, executive producer. I don't know. An executive position at JFL.
And this is arguably, the most important comedy festival showcase.
It's like,
in North America. Like, again, the milestone. It isn't now. I mean, it hasn't been for a while, and the milestones are weird now. But yes, it was like, oh, you got JFL. This is like your ticket to, another special.
And of course, I wanted to do it, and I continued to audition when the booker changed, and then the new booker became a woman. She's an awesome lady. Like, I really like her. It was still a goal I had, but from what I've heard from other people in the industry, like around a table, when my name comes up, it's very much like she will never do it. Like there's no fucking way because of that one interaction. And like, what a little fucking pussy you have to be to say to someone's face, like, you're funny, you're a great comic, you got a lot of moxie. I'm going to ruin your career because you called me on my shit. It's like, it's really, but he's not in that position anymore. Like a lot of these people do thankfully go away. I grew up in church, so it's like, I mean, a lot of them get shuffled around, like youth pastors who molested somebody.
Right, there's predators everywhere.
Yeah. But you know, at least in that one church, he gets shuffled away eventually, and then you can move up a little bit. And that's been kind of my saving grace, is that whoever has been watching that's like on my side, you know, some of those things are coming back around. But yeah, there's just, I mean, there's people that work at Netflix that worked at JFL at that time that still are just like, no, we don't fuck with her. Like, you know.
I mean, well, speaking of Netflix, I mean, Netflix does, you know, I think, again, for the general population, you know, sees them greenlight Dave Chappelle's umpteenth anti-trans special, but then does like one special full of queer comics for Pride. Isn't that great? And again, back to the money thing, it's like who they think will make money. And yet, as you mentioned, the taste makers, the gatekeepers are changing. They are cooler. They do not tolerate as much bullshit. They're women, they're people of color. And hopefully with the, I don't know, the atrophying of Hollywood, that progress doesn't, you know, change. But I guess I want to talk more like politically and like culturally. I think a lot of people have, you know, written many pieces about the reactionary like movement of stand-up comedy, that like maybe it's Trump, maybe it's an overreaction to, again, just having to be slightly less of a dick to people who don't look like you. But there's kind of this reactionary like renaissance, and you see that in like podcasts, right? Legion of Skanks or Come Town, or even Shane Gillis and his whole like, isn't it funny to just, you know, make fun of Chinese people and their food? Like, and he gets to, you know, he gets almost SNL, but not quite. But then he got to host. And I think that fascinates me a lot. Like I remember JP Sears, who's basically like an anti-vaxxer, right winger, Rogan adjacent, was like at Cobb's Comedy in the middle of the pandemic. And I'm like, fuck, really? Cobb's in San Francisco? Or fucking, you're putting fucking JP Sears up there? Well, okay, you know. So what do you make of that? What do you see in audiences, and what do you see in comedians? Like, is there a reactionary renaissance?
Yeah, I think, at least from my perspective, I do feel like some of it in the last couple of years has dissipated. And maybe that's also because the money is following just people like viral people,
Right.
which I know you had that as a question too, and like the TikTok, Instagram of it all. The major plus side of that is that comedy and headlining spots at clubs and theater sellouts are also including like a lot of women, older women, a lot of queer folks, like trans comics, that it's now like some of that old guard is like, oh, these TikTok people are taking over. And I'm like, that's not why you're mad about it, though. I mean, you're mad because now a comedy club calendar includes more people that don't look like you.
Right.
And that's frustrating. Whether or not I think they should be there is case by case, because I just think you should be funny or whatever. Do your one cash grab fucking tour with your TikTok following and then realize stand up is hard and fucking terrible, and then go back to making sponsorship money. That's fine with me. But I do think some of that, it was so frustrating, is it would take really like 2 to 3 leaders, you know, to continue to dissipate this. But one example used was Come Town. I don't know this for sure. I know those guys. I really like those guys. It seems like I wouldn't, but like I love Stavros. I think, and again, don't quote me because I don't know the story and I never listened to the podcast, but for what I've heard, part of the reason they dissolved it was it got too real. It was very funny pre-Trump to them to be like, oh, we have an extra Patreon level for Nazis. And then their fans became people they hated, which is going to happen if you foster that kind of environment. You're going to get fans that are taking it very seriously and are actually bad people or actually racist or whatever. And I think they were just like, oh, that's not what we wanted. Oops.
Right. It's not, and I don't mean to like, name specifics. And I did have a weird interaction with Nick Mullen a few years ago around the Shane Gillis stuff, actually.
Oh, yeah.
But I didn't. Yeah, I know Stavros is a good guy, but it's also like the ironic reactionary thing. Like, I think Matt stumbled into a live Legion of Skanks show where they were just like watching American History X, like, but rooting for the Nazis, like, ironically. And that's just it's definitely not funny to people of color. It's not funny to women. I don't know who it's for, but you're right that there is a little bit of a like, to almost reminds me of like Naomi Klein has a new book called Doppelganger, of kind of like through the looking glass, like if you do irony too much, you will become that thing. JP Sears, in fact, to my example, was a guy who made fun of wellness culture online. And that was his shtick, was to make fun of wellness culture. And then he became a like anti-vax influencer comedian person. So he basically became that wellness guy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. And as you guys know, like the Skanks I've been very vocal about. I'm disappointed in anyone that I respect who does their festival. I can't stop it. I can't, I had a like mild psychiatric break last year just trying to talk to people like fucking Eddie Pepitone, who generally stands for things I agree with and knows the difference between right and wrong and will do their festival any year they ask. I don't understand it. I mean, Dave has gone full becoming the guy. You know what I mean? Like he literally says out loud on his podcast with zero irony, everybody, that he thinks women who have abortions should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law. Both persecuted and prosecuted.
Yeah.
And he says it with all earnesty, and like it sickens me that he has a comedy festival and then like people I respect go do it and also the people attend it. But there's not much I can do about it. I can have conversations with friends, and guess what? Every single friend I've had a conversation with has still done it. And I've sent clips, but that's a situation where I can't be too loud about them anymore because they're fans, which they have fostered this community of very angry men, not 100%, of course, come after me and have doxed me and threatened me and put my family's like addresses online. Like it's
for
always
what? Oh, for talking about Legion of Skanks?
Yeah, literally just for talking shit about them, for saying Lewis isn't funny, for Dave isn't funny, which they aren't. Like their whole thing is like, how many times can I say like the R word and the F slur and get the crowd to clap when you're like, oh, what happened to good joke writing? What happened to good comics? It's like, that's clapter. This is what you guys are against, right? But you say the F slur and everybody cheers because they're like, he said it. Like that's literally comedy.
Clapter. That's clapter.
Yeah.
And clapter, for those of you who don't know, it's like when somebody makes a political point that you agree with, that's sort of beyond funny, and you clap for it. And oftentimes comics sort of poo-poo clapter because it's like, oh, you're moving into preachy. But sometimes it can also be a really good punchline and a good point. So it depends on how many clapter breaks you get. You can get one or two. It's fine. It can't all be clapter breaks. But you're totally right. That is exactly clapter. Just doing slurs and having people salute you. They're literally just celebrating the fact that you did a slur.
Right. And this, again, goes back to my bottom line, the meat and potatoes of like how I could succeed. So, for example, like some Skanks fans came after me. I was doxxed by this other group, similar reasons, just being a mouthy broad. Because and you can't be mouthy even in a funny way. Like it's like we don't take roasting. Like we will exact revenge no matter what to put you in your place. So part of the revenge that somebody involved with some group got was they report my Instagram account en masse, which is a thing that happens now, and buy me fake followers on a regular basis. I literally every day I get like 1,500 spam followers. Instagram flags it.
Oh God.
So what that means for people who don't know is like I'm basically buried in the algorithm. This entire industry right now is about followers, and like I literally cannot grow no matter what I do. Like on the actual tech side of it, if I like post a reel on my own, it barely gets seen. If I'm collaborating with a comedy club or another person, then it can go viral. But you can't search for me a lot of the time. I have a very common name, so it's already hard. But if you put in Amy Miller comedy, like I won't come up. And I'm not in denial about this. Like, again, like I worked in tech. I was with like social media marketing for years. Like I'm not a dummy about this. I know just the facts of like, for example, I performed in 2 arenas back to back. That's 35,000 people. Even if only 10% of them liked me enough to think to get out their phones and follow me, that's 3,500 new followers. I got 0. Like I literally can't be like searched or grow or seen by the algorithm on my own because this group of men who were mad that I made fun of their fucking little kings
God.
have like there are really specific ways to attack creators, which happened a lot during the BLM movement and the height of that. Like a lot of Black creators came after Instagram and said like our views have tanked, nobody's seeing our stories, like we're literally being hidden. And then now it's happening again with people talking
Around
about
Gaza.
genocide. Yeah. And Instagram won't do anything, and I have no recourse. So that's like that is my income. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That they were like they're winning right now, and it's very frustrating. But it's like to take this one moment where I'm like, oh, this guy's a piece of shit, or they say horrible things, and you shouldn't go to their comedy festival. Like the revenge that they get is very effective financially, which is this other layer of being someone who's outspoken, especially a woman,
Yeah, and someone who's fighting for the domain. I mean, I see you as someone who's fighting for the domain, and I've only gotten a taste of it, and I'm in the political world, which is its own, insanity, and especially lately being on Piers Morgan and being sort of exposed to a lot of the right wingers and their followers. It's like, yeah, I'm taking down all of my like, hey, hit me up on Squarespace. Fuck that shit. It's always the same dude who's like, nah, just mad at me.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even worth it anyway. But it's just like it makes me so fucking angry, Amy. Like that, yeah,
Same.
that story you just told makes me like we ride it at dawn. Fuck everyone. Like I need to learn how to use like a machete straight up. Like it makes me really angry. And it also makes me not want to like, again, like have any love for the comedy world, but we fight for it. You fight for it. And there are some awesome comedians, so many of them. And that's the other thing. I feel like a lot of people who dedicate themselves to just like talking shit about, I can't remember the journalist. There was like some blogger who would write and very interesting stories about like the rightward drift of stand up. And then I sent him, this is not going to be specific, but I just was like, hey, I love your blog. It'd be so cool if you also included like shows and comedians you like. So you could support comedians who you do like instead of like the predators and the right wingers and the ones that you were talking about. And he was like, that's not what this is about. And I'm like, well, fuck you. Like,
I know exactly what you're talking about, and we won't name him, but that's a great example of a person where people go like, oh, you must love this guy, and I'm like, I actually find him supremely annoying. He also gives very like wanted to be a comic and it didn't work out vibes, and so he's gonna like pull back the curtain. Well, you're not back here, so don't fucking pull back our curtain if you're not in it. And that's but the same version of him who was a man who actually was in comedy that would write shit like that. First of all, a fucking fantasy so far. Haven't met him. I guess maybe your husband. I don't know.
Who talks about what's going on in stand-up?
he's just like willing to like burn a bridge to talk about shit he cares about, you know what I mean, and like lose a gig or whatever.
I mean, now Matt, ever since the genocide popped off, Matt was like, now's my time to actually talk about the shit I want to talk about.
Right.
But,
and Matt, where were you when we were talking about the predators? See, even the good ones.
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean, the outsider kind of blogger type who does exactly what you're saying, just showcases the predators, which then brings more of those people who are like, well, I'm going to support him triple because you're coming after him. It's like, why don't you just, promote good shit that you like?
Yeah, I mean, I do think that, you know, we don't have to go too far into it, but just to button the rightward drift in comedy, the reactionary drift, it's not a phenomenon that should be completely ignored. I don't know the role of other comedians. I think the role is limited, but you have like Jay Johnston getting arrested, pleading guilty to storming the Capitol on January 6th. He's, worked on Mr. Show and voiced on Bob's Burgers. And then, like, I guess Gavin McInnes used to be a comedian in the scene. And, like, there's just, like, all these right-wing
I did
figures.
his show, Francesca.
Oh, shit.
Before Proud Boy everything, when it was very, like, oh, the guy from Vice, like, he's a good guy. People were like, he's a good guy. Like, I didn't know anything.
Yeah.
I also did his show to respond to the doxing from this one group. So whatever, but I'm still like ashamed of it. But I didn't know, anything except for what
this was years ago
were telling me. Oh, yeah, years ago. Yeah, of course.
I was like, what?
Pre
Proud Boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when he was like, kind of when he was beginning.
Yes, exactly. And I do see. So I do feel like a lot of the, especially men in comedy, white men in comedy, who were like, oh, it'll be funny if Trump wins. Like, right. I do think a lot of that has dissipated, but not 100%, like I literally heard of an interview with a comedian I respect 2 days ago that he's a straight white dude, of course. And he's very funny, nice person. But he was just like, yeah, this is just all social media shit. Like, it's like, things aren't even that bad. Like, people are like, oh, we're walking into fascism or whatever. And I'm like, he's like, I live in New York City. Like, it's fine. I'm like, it's not affecting your life. But even you live in a city where your mayor is trying to like criminalize homelessness and wearing a mask. Like, it is right where you are already. Like, what are you talking about? But also, you're not in any of the groups that this shit is affecting. So of course you're like, it's just an exaggeration.
You want to pay child support for like, the person you impregnate? Like, it's
exactly. It's but I think that people have gotten quieter and done less of the not the skanks, because they're just going to triple down to make money. It's all about money too. It's like, because these guys can sleep at night by going like, well, I don't know if people think we're being serious, then they do. But I'm making a living, and and to compliment them, some of the worst people I've ever met. I do like when comedians go outside of the industry to make money. Like, that's awesome. The entire fucking empire that like Tom Segura and Christina built was on their own terms. Like, that's cool. But like, it's all about money, and I like that people are getting a little. Yeah, I like people are getting a little quieter with the ironic, like, reactionary shit. But I wish that they would also now get loud and be like, actually, millions of fans that I have who vote, this is what I believe in, and it's not a joke anymore, and here's what maybe you could consider doing. Like, it seems so easy to me, but that's because I've always done it. But I'm also not rich, and I probably I don't know if I would be if I had a different personality, but I also wouldn't.
I think even if you were rich, you would not be a piece of shit. I think we know that from just an hour with you, Amy Miller. I'm like, I guess the last thing is I'm also worried about the algorithm. I think you're totally right that you do have more queer performers and people of color and women, and I love that. And like, we know our friend Sammy Obeid is crushing it with like speaking about what's going on in Palestine and Gaza, even though, that shit is traditionally shadow banned. But I am concerned, where they're like mining all of our content for AI and they're like, you don't own any of this. Thank you. Bye. And sometimes I hear people say, like, even with a million followers, it doesn't always translate to people coming out to see you on shows.
No, it doesn't always. And of course, we know versions of Sammy too that are like not hyper political people, like an Irene too, for example, were just very honestly like traditional good stand-up comic, but she is political because she is queer and Asian.
Her identity, right.
And doesn't come. She's crazy. But selling out all these shows and selling out theaters and stuff, it's like it still is political because of who she is, but she's also just like people are following her and coming to see her because they like her, and that's awesome. And she has good jokes that they relate to. And so yeah, we love to see it. Sammy's a whole different thing where he's probably like, I mean, he's probably in danger to some extent out on the road, like I worry about him. So yeah, the algorithm works for good, I think, a lot of the time right now. But it's I also feel like whatever's happening right now could be very temporary. So I don't.
It always is.
Much. Yeah.
There's always like the next thing. Whatever next app is rolled out, Amy, I'm telling you, I'm gonna get it on. I'm gonna get on it early. I'm gonna do all of it.
I've always said this. I was like one of the first 1,000 people on Twitter. This is a true story. And I had a blog at the time, my blog spot.
Hell yeah.
And right away I was like, this is the worst fucking idea I've ever seen in my life. Like, who would use this? Got off and then got back on, of course, still on. But I have a hard time early adopting because I'm just like, this is annoying because it's a thing I don't want to maintain. You know what I mean? Like, it's not.
Well, that's how I feel about the clips. I'm like, I'd rather spend time writing and working on the craft and doing the jokes or doing a show than like spending all this time setting up your fucking camera and the clips and the clip mill that comics are now asked to be and do, even with their like often measly salaries and lack of time, is just so bizarre and ridiculous. It's wild. To me.
And AI aside, there's also that whole guy that just performs in his bedroom and pretends he's in a comedy club and has millions of followers. Like, so it's like whatever, people are consuming it. If they don't care, I don't know. Like if you would rather like buy a ticket to see like a TikTok star who's never done try stand up, then like see me. That's fine. It's fine. I can't be upset about it because it's just a new form of celebrity, Like
totally.
People have been going to fucking look at Chris Kattan on stage for years. He doesn't know how to do stand up, And
now we've got Huck Tua.
I know. And I again can't be mad about that. I'm like, at least it's a woman.
At least it's a woman who's openly speaking about sex. But I will say it's always like a skinny white bitch who is like immediately catapulted to stardom off of nothing. Like that's always who it is.
At least also she's vocally anti-Trump. I'm like, hey, low bar, but I'll take
low bar to be like she's not even necessarily anti-Trump. She's just like, I just don't want to fuck him. Like, no thanks.
I know, and that's which all it took for people to get mad at her. Like literally, people in Congress comment on it, like she's against our president, and it's just like, what? Okay,
we would Huck Tua on Trump stick collectively. We do it every single day. Let's get this baby across the finish line. Amy Miller, you're wonderful. AmyMillerComedy.com is where you go. She's touring in Vegas, Portland, Cincinnati, New Orleans at the end of August.
Follow me on Instagram. So try it. Go ahead and try it. Type in Amy Miller Comedy.
Amy Miller Comedy.
Really doing me a solid because it's all that matters. But we'll see if it works because I don't get my followers.
Turn on your notifications. That's fucking wild. And we're talking about years ago?
Oh, yeah, years ago, which they must have spent some real money, because to buy 1,500 fake followers every single day for years is like truly like I mean, that's an investment.
What about just starting from zero?
I could, I guess, but then they could just do the same thing again. So I just
They've forgotten
lose, like,
about you. I think they've forgotten. Haven't they
I'm
moved on to
still
dox some
getting the
other woman?
It's like exactly 1,500 spam followers every single day, because now
Jesus.
Instagram tells you, and then they're like, do you want to remove these or risk? And it's very uniform. Like the bots all have like names from a Spanish speaking country. Like it's very obvious when I get the dump every day at the same time.
Jesus
That's
Christ.
same. Yeah. It's crazy. It's nuts. And it's like
It's
my
nuts,
whole job, you know?
But everyone, you know what? Go support Amy Miller live in person, and online at Amy Miller Comedy on Instagram. Amy, are you doing one of your many podcasts? I know. Are you doing
I
Who's Your Godcast?
currently don't have a podcast, which is so freeing, but probably will have to have one again soon.
It's gonna happen. All right, well, stay tuned, and thank you so much for being on, for spilling all of the tea, and I love it. So appreciate you. Take care. And thank you guys for being here. That was great. Also, Amy, a lot of love in the chat for you, just so you know. Benjamin Morrill says, love Amy Miller. No shade to Matt, but I'm down for only female comics nowadays. I'm fine if the females take over everything. Yes, the females. Amy put in her identification as woman comic, because female comic is very weird. It's like we're a species of something. But thank you so much for the support and the love. Cassandra Capranica says comedians should get immunity from cancel culture. You are professionals. Yeah, I mean, it depends. Right, it depends. If you didn't assault someone, I agree with that. But usually it's all about like Ricky Gervais being like, why can't I do my trans jokes too? It's just so bad. I don't care enough about him, but it is sad that it's like him and fucking Sacha Baron Cohen. Although I think it's way worse to be a raging Zionist than it is to be, kind of jump on the like have a bad trans joke. That's just where I'm at. Fabian Vargas, thanks so much for gifting those memberships. You're the best. Thank you, Doug, for your super sticker. And let's see, over on, do we have, oh man, I'm sorry. I don't have Twitch open, but you guys, you're so wonderful. Thank you for being here and listening to all the inside baseball. This is whenever you see an interview with a woman in comedy and it's like, what is it like to be a woman in comedy? What you just heard is all of the shit that they won't tell Vanity fucking Fair, because it's Vanity Fair. This is their interview. They're not going to be like, actually, it fucking sucks. And you have to deal with a lot of bullshit. But you definitely do. And as someone trying to creep in through the back door here with all of the Frantifa at my back supporting me, come see me in Chicago. And we're thinking about a New York date. We're thinking about maybe a Philly date. Matt, obviously, we meaning Matt and I, and then Karina, our opener. So come see us in Chicago, August 19th and 20th. We're doing a live podcast on the 19th at the Lincoln Lodge. And then on the 20th, we are going to be doing stand-up. And oh my God, they're going to sell out. I have to look into what we're going to do, because they're going to sell out and I'm worried people won't get their tickets. But until then, until Tuesday, have a great weekend. Bye.